You've finished your story, put it in your desk drawer for a month, revised heartily, and are now ready to work with your first editor in what may be a series of editors enlisted to elevate your manuscript and prepare your work for publication. It's an exciting time, and you want to get started right away. I understand that. You may also be wondering, though, how long editing should truly take. You can read a novel in 2 days. Can an editor turn around the same novel in 2 days? If your editor can turn around your novel in 2 days, you're likely working with a generative AI model rather than a real human being, which can complicate your publishing prospects and even render your book's copyright invalid. And there is a growing coalition of authors urging United States publishers to decline any and all works prompted using machine learning, language learning, or other generative AI models. I'll say it plainly if you need to hear it. Please do not use generative AI tools or models to help you brainstorm, organize, write, or revise in any capacity whatsoever. A few weeks ago, I shared editing options by timing and cost. I'll put the link in the show description for you. In that article, I went over at a high level the various editing options available to you in your story, including their relative costs and when to enlist those services during your writing and revision processes. This week, I'm talking about managing your expectations when working with your chosen human editing professionals who are not superhuman, who are not speed readers, and who need adequate time to read, process, and edit in accordance with your vision, style, and other editorial parameters. Here's a glimpse into how long each stage of editing actually takes and what to expect for the professional editing process overall. So let's get this train moving. Welcome back to the MetaStellar channel. I'm Fallon Clark, literary editor, story developer, and author, here to share writing advice with you. Before getting into the gritty details, here's a quick reminder that the 3 major parts of any professional service are speed, quality, and cost. Speed is the rate at which your editor works through your manuscript until the document or other deliverable is back in your hands. Quality is the level of attention to detail your editor provides as they work through your manuscript, looking at the fine points and giving feedback. And cost is the total sum agreed upon between you and your editor for the desired editorial service and is often dependent upon both speed and quality. Generally speaking, 2 of these 3 parts will be more important to you than the other, and you'll need to choose which parts take precedence. So get clear on which 2 parts are most important to you before any editor outreach begins. You'll save yourself and your future editors lots of time and mental strain. Here are some factors I used to calculate these turnaround times for you. The average word count per manuscript page is about 250 words. The average editorial reading speed without making edits is 1.5 minutes per page. And the average editing hours per week for a single editor is somewhere between 25 and 30 hours. Since the average reading speed is about a minute per page, your editor is reading at about 65% speed during the read-through. Their reading time slows further once they begin tracking changes and adding comments. To put this in context, while a general reader may blast through your novel manuscript, about 80,000 words, in about 5.5 hours if they read straight through without stopping, your editor, reading with due care and consideration, needs nearly 9 hours to finish the same novel. That one sitting read turns into nearly 2 full days of reading for your editor. As a note, the following turnaround times are for novels of about 80,000 words, unless a word count is separately specified. If your novel or story is shorter or longer, please adjust accordingly. And always, always ask your chosen editor directly what their turnaround time looks like, since they're likely scheduling or working on multiple projects and may not be able to start reading the same day they receive your manuscript. Because your editor is looking only at your story outline or summary or synopsis to assess potential plot and character issues, giving you considerations to take into your writing to make sure your story is rooted in place and time and will reach your ideal readers as intended, a story or manuscript development review usually has the fastest turnaround time. Your editor is reading roughly 2,500 words, up to about 10 pages of text, and writing you a custom editorial letter sharing their findings. The average turnaround time for this work is 2 to 3 business days. And that turnaround time includes 2 read-throughs of your outline or summary, plus necessary time to plan and write your editorial letter. Because your editor is reading a very messy first draft of your manuscript, or even a partial, one that may meander and spiral and uncover snafus, helping you to make sense of the ideas bouncing around your noodler, so you may expand or contract those ideas depending on the needs of your story and the goals of your discovery edit, reading and processing what's just been read is a critical part of the editorial process. In either case, whether it's a discovery review or a manuscript assessment, your editor is reading your full-length manuscript, about 320 pages of text, and writing you a custom editorial letter sharing their findings. The average turnaround time for something like this is usually 1 to 2 weeks, and that's for each service I described. And that turnaround time includes 1 full read-through of your manuscript, plus necessary time to organize thoughts, plan, and write your editorial letter. Because your editor is reading your full manuscript with a critical eye on the big picture of your novel, the structure, the characters, the plot, the settings, the point of view and perspective voice, the message, and more, giving you ways to think through the potential impact of your novel on your target reading audience, as well as recommendations for elevating your manuscript to reach reader expectations, reading is also a critical part of developmental editing. Your editor is reading your full-length manuscript and writing you a custom editorial letter sharing their findings. The average turnaround time for this work is 2 to 3 weeks. And that turnaround time includes 1 full read-through of your manuscript and 1 developmental reading to add comments and track changes to your manuscript, plus necessary time to organize their thoughts and plan and write an editorial memo so you know what to expect when you open your manuscript again. As a note, in that last article I mentioned, editorial options by timing and cost, I also talked about developmental ghosting, which is a much more hands-on and involved process than a straightforward developmental edit. So it takes longer, about 8 to 12 weeks. Because your editor is reading your full manuscript with a critical eye on the individual sentences of your novel and how they combine for character, theme, message, and reader impact, the paragraphing, the antecedent assignments, the flow of language balanced against the pacing, the immersion of point of view and perspective voice, including refinement and more, giving you a sentence-by-sentence, fully tracked manuscript, reading is also a critical part of substantive editing. Your editor is reading and fully tracking, using track changes and comments, your entire manuscript, as well as preparing an editorial memo sharing their findings. The average turnaround time for a substantive edit is about 2 to 3 weeks. And that turnaround time includes 1 full read-through of your manuscript and one language combing at the sentence level to track changes within your manuscript, plus necessary time to organize their thoughts, write that editorial memo so you can brace yourself for the red line. Because your editor is reading your full manuscript with a critical eye on the individual sentences of your novel and how they combine for clarity, concision, cohesion, and correctness, the grammar, the word use, the syntax of voice development, the punctuation, including refinement, and more, and giving you a fully tracked manuscript that is grammatically correct and sound, reading plays a smaller part in copy editing. In fact, some copy editors, depending on the edit and how familiar they are with you as a writer, may not perform a read-through at all before beginning edits so they can retain those all-important fresh eyes. Your editor is reading your full-length manuscript and marking up your manuscript with their changes. The average turnaround time is 1 to 2 weeks, and that turnaround time includes 1 full read-through of your manuscript, if applicable, 1 sentence-level grammar edit to track changes within your manuscript, plus necessary time to organize thoughts and write that editorial memo. Again, that red line. Your editor is acting as an ideal reader, diving into your manuscript for true errors that may cause reader hangups and make your novel look less polished than it could otherwise be. And you'll receive your manuscript back with only the true errors noted, which you can correct or your formatter can correct, or however you've worked out that process between you and your proofreader. The average turnaround time for a proofread is 3 to 5 business days. And that Turnaround time includes one sentence level final errors reading to catch true errors within what should be a PDF of your manuscript. In a perfect world where you have the maximum budget available to you and are able to enlist help in all these 7 editorial areas, working closely with your professional team from concept to finished book, and assuming your editors need the maximum editing time available, your editors will have your manuscript for about 13 weeks. That's more than 3 months. And this doesn't even include you opening and reviewing any of the edits or comments. When factoring in your time as a critical assessor and creative implementer of that editorial feedback, the timeline doubles to about 6 or 7 months or more, since you also need time to process what you've read and ask any questions you may have about the suggested changes. That 7 months doesn't even include the work of a book formatter, designer, or other adjacent book services. Planning for editorial help means setting realistic expectations about the work your editors are doing with and for you, including the time it takes to thoroughly read and assess your manuscript and edit in alignment with your book's needs, your writing style, and other reader expectations. You've worked hard on your novel. Rushing your novel through editorial services because you're racing to publish ultimately does a disservice to your important cultural work. And yes, writing fiction is important cultural work. So allow yourself and your chosen editors to spend the time needed with your manuscript, developing, shaping, and refining so your novel can transform into its best self. Happy writing. Did you know I work with indie authors at most stages of writing and revision? Fly into the novel nest. Check out the About the Editor section to see my services, portfolio, and some client reviews, and let's get started. Your story awaits. And thank you so much to our Patreon supporters who keep the MetaStellar engine running. Your contributions are invaluable and help us pay for original fiction that we publish. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you found this video helpful.